Welcome to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, produced by the Caribbean Leadership Program under the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD, where we provide a number of leadership development interventions tailored for the Caribbean context in support of public sector transformation as well as regional development. In this Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, we will be discussing a range of leadership issues within the public sector context which impact our national and regional development in the Caribbean.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership. Here's your host, Dr. Lloyd Parks.
Welcome to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, produced by the Caribbean Leadership Program under the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD, where we provide a number of leadership development interventions tailored for the Caribbean context in support of public sector transformation and regional development. In this Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, we will be discussing a range of leadership issues within the public sector context which impact our national and regional development in the Caribbean. Today's topic is leading in financial crisis, and we are honored to have as our guest today somebody who knows a lot about dealing with financial crises, and we have none other than the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Mr. Timothy Antoine. Mr. Antoine hails from the Spice Isle of Grenada, and he is an economist and development practitioner by training. He is a graduate of the London School of Economics, where he completed his master's in social policy and planning. He is somebody who has served for 22 years in the government of Grenada, and much of those 22 years he served as permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance. In addition to all of that, we are honored to have him as our project steering committee co-chair with the Caribbean Leadership Project, and he has served as guest facilitator, talking to our participants about this very issue of leading through financial crisis. Mr. Antoine, it is our pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Dr. Parks, and I really do appreciate this opportunity and to say that I'm a big fan of the Caribbean Leadership Program, what it is to do, what it has been doing, and the impact it has had so far. So it's my pleasure to be on today.
Thank you. Let's start off by you sharing a little bit about your personal journey, how you got into leadership, particularly in the area of public financial management.
Well, actually, my leadership journey started in my home as a young boy growing up. Yes, because I am the first of 15 children.
Wow.
We all lived together, one mother, one father, under one roof. And so I learned very early responsibility and accountability. My parents on occasion would leave me in charge of my siblings. And they, on the return, would hold me accountable for the deeds and especially the misdeeds.
No pressure.
Yeah. So that was an eye-opener for me. Very early I learned that if I'm going to be held responsible, then I'm going to have to hold somebody accountable. And those were my early leadership lessons and experience. Yeah.
You have had significant experience in terms of leading financial crises. First in your home country of Grenada, and of course in your own role as governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. How would you describe the financial crises that are facing us here in our Caribbean region?
We are pressed on many fronts. We can speak of financial crises, we can speak of fiscal crises. The reality is that we still have not yet fully recovered from the global financial crisis. And that occurred 10 years ago.
Wow, yes.
That in fact, there are some of our countries are yet to return to the growth level of the global, the pre-global financial crisis period. That's the whole decade, and in some cases, we refer to the decade as a lost decade because of so much economic challenges. In fact, contraction in the economy during that period of time. Now, many of our countries are experiencing fiscal stress and in some instances fiscal and debt distress. It is no secret that some of our Caribbean countries are among the most heavily indebted in the world.
Yes.
And the frequent and increasing, ferocious storms have added to our fiscal and debt woes. So we already had our challenges, and then when you put on top of that what we've experienced, most recently in 2017 in Dominica, for example, but also in Anguilla and Barbuda and other parts of the region, we are essentially finding that our governments are attempting to do far more than the resource envelope permits. And so in some cases, previously relied on sources of revenue have dwindled or dried up. So for example, for the oil importing countries, oil prices have fallen. For some of the other countries that are oil importers, you've had the financial sector has experienced significant decline. And for other countries, whether that is St. Kitts, Nevis, or Barbados, or the OECS countries, you've had the sugar and banana industries have folded. So those things have contributed to what we see, which is lower growth, high debt, and in a number of cases, countries in significant fiscal disequilibrium, which means they then have to make a decision about how they are going to proceed. And that's the situation, for example, in Barbados. Right now, that was a situation in Grenada. That was a situation in Jamaica. And I could mention other countries as well. So that on the fiscal side, that is to say the government finances and the government operations remains a huge challenge for many Caribbean governments and Caribbean countries.
Okay.
We've also had in the financial system, in the OECS, for example, a couple of bank failures following the global financial crisis, and those have been very painful, and we've had to work very hard. ECCB obviously playing a key role there with the member countries to actually resolve failed institutions. We had, I believe, 3 of such failed institutions. So we've had our fair share of crises, and of course, the last one I mentioned, fiscal financial, is the essential threat from climate change.
In fact, I think the Caribbean region is the second most vulnerable region in the world in terms of impact of climate change.
Yes, so we're among the lowest emitters, but among the hardest hit, and we're also we are in fact the most tourism dependent region in the world. So when you add that into the mix, we're dealing with several crises. Some of them are behind us, some of them are with us. The climate change one is a serious one. I think Prime Minister Skerritt put it best after his own experience with Maria in 2017, when he said to the United Nations General Assembly, "I am coming to you just from the front line of climate change, the war against climate change." Because that is what we're experiencing in the Caribbean. So we have our hands full, but we can't afford to protest and simply lie down and die, as we would say. We have to fight.
Definitely.
To change our situation, and that is what I suppose leadership is all about as well.
On that note, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to pick up on the leadership required to deal with all of these different crises.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Across Caribbean public services, there is great demand for transformational leadership to create an environment that fosters innovation in public service delivery. But how do you know if your organization has this enabling environment? Grounded in research, the Caribbean Leadership Project has developed an enabling environment assessment. This provides a wide range of strategies and actions to help take public sector organizations and regional institutions to a higher level in enabling transformational leaders. To find out how you can use this assessment to foster and inspire purpose-driven leadership, to build leadership capacity for action, encourage collaboration, and support the achievement of results, visit us at www.clptoolkit.org and contact us at info@caribbeanleadership.org. Let us help your organization learn, network, succeed.
the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
You're listening to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where we are discussing the topic of leading through financial crisis. And we have with us the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Mr. Timothy Antoine. Mr. Antoine, before the break, you alluded to the fact that leadership was very much required for dealing with these various wicked problems of financial crises, environmental crises that have been in fact impacting our Caribbean region. And so that takes me now to looking at Grenada, where you served as Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, along with other leaders. And Grenada had to tackle its own financial crises. Share with us that story and the successes that you experienced, what you had to do, what the leadership had to do, what were the challenges and how you addressed them.
Thanks for asking, and the Grenada story is a very interesting one. Leadership matters, always has, always will. And in the case of Grenada, quick context. Grenada was hit by a massive hurricane in 2004, Hurricane Ivan, 200% of GDP. Just as Grenada was recovering, and it was coming back very well, and I want to thank all around the region who helped Grenada during that period of time. Grenada then found itself, like all the other Caribbean countries, dealing with the global financial crisis. So
that was 2008.
Trauma upon trauma from 2008, correct. So just recovering from Hurricane Ivan, and then you get the global financial crisis. So two shocks in 4-5 years. And so Grenada found itself in a very difficult situation, fiscally speaking. To put it bluntly, Grenada was collecting, government that is, collecting about $35 million per month and was spending about $53 million. So that's about an $18 million gap.
Yes.
Month by month. So that adds up very quickly into deficit and into debt, because that's how you get your debt. A big part of your debt. So come 2013, Grenada had gone through a very brutal recession. And general elections occurred in February of 2013. And the new administration, on entry into office, had some decisions to make. As a financial secretary in the Ministry of Finance, I had, on a continuous basis, briefed the cabinet on the situation. But obviously, it gets very difficult when you're going into election period to get decisions made.
Indeed.
Yes, and that's a practical reality, and I want to understand the political economy with these things. Now, once the new administration took office, the Ministry of Finance again presented the picture and made certain recommendations again for how we would move forward. And this is where I want to highlight the leadership now at the political level, because the Prime Minister Mitchell, to his credit, recognized the gravity of the situation and made a decision to move forward immediately to resolution. Now, that's important because he had just, his party, completed a clean sweep of all the seats in the parliament and had an overwhelming mandate to govern, but also an overwhelming mandate to deliver.
Yes.
and I think he having weighed it and having listened to our detailed brief, I remember we had a very big briefing book with all the details about the situation and so on, coming in for the new administration, as we would normally do after the general election. And the first thing really in the Grenada story is we had to embrace our reality. We have to embrace and confront our reality. And I find that's a very important lesson in Grenada's experience. Recognizing your situation and realizing we have to do something about it. So for me, the first thing that Grenada did, which to me was extremely important, was an embracing of the reality. As I think Jacques put it, we must embrace reality as it is, not as we would like it to be.
Oh, yes.
That was a very important decision. This is serious and we need action to address it now, at the beginning of the term. I think the second lesson was getting the right people around the table. So beyond the initial discussion in the Ministry of Finance between, the Minister of Finance, who is the Prime Minister, is the Prime Minister, and the Ministry of Finance, our senior management team, led by myself, it was, as Financial Secretary, it was who else has to get involved in this conversation beyond the ministry and beyond government. And to the Prime Minister's credit, he initiated a committee of social partners.
Okay.
Yes, very, very important decision. And the reason why it's important is because there was those who said, you don't need to have any social partners, you just got an overwhelming mandate from the electorate to govern. And he said, no, we have to get more people involved, and we have to get cross-section of our society around the table as we grapple with this very serious challenge for our country. So the Prime Minister, I believe in March, 1 month after assuming office, convened the first meeting of the Committee of Social Partners. And that committee included not just the tripartite grouping, which would be business, labor, and government, but it also included civil society and the churches or the faith community.
Okay.
So it was five parties, not three. Government, business or private sector, labor unions, churches, and civil society. Essentially development NGOs and so on in the country. There's an umbrella grouping. They were representatives were drawn from that group. So it is that construct which then began to engage around the reality and what it is that we must do as we go forward. Obviously the government led, because the government is the one who had to put the plans on the table, but the government got feedback. Let me give you an example. As we were designing the homegrown program, which we would eventually seek the support of the IMF for, and people sometimes misunderstand that and say, well, it's a homegrown program and the IMF was involved. Well, it's a homegrown program because the initial design, conceptualization design, were done in country by Grenada. And then the Grenada recognized it would need external support and went to the IMF with a program and sought support. Of course, there were discussions, there were negotiations, some things had to be tweaked based on what the IMF, feedback from the IMF, but Grenada went with a program. And of course, the IMF weighed in with technical support, and we were able to come to terms.
Governor Antoine, we are just going to take a short break. What you have said, it's so interesting. I'm going to pick it up right after this break as you talk about the very unique design of the homegrown IMF program. We will be right back.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Does your organization have leaders with the self-awareness and confidence to lead effectively? Can they develop high-performing teams? Can they work effectively with multiple stakeholders? And are they equipped to navigate change and complexity? For these and other leadership challenges, the Caribbean Leadership Program offers a suite of virtual, face-to-face and customized interventions to meet your needs. Our 5-day workshop on leading change and transition will provide senior executives with the mindset shift and tools to successfully lead change initiatives. Our transformational leadership development program is ideal for preparing high-potential leaders for succession to executive roles. And our mid-level leadership development program is perfect for those leading from the middle. For details on these and other offerings, visit our website at www.caribbeanleadership.org. Join us to learn, network, succeed.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, and we are discussing leading in financial crisis. And we have with us the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Mr. Timothy Antoine. Before the break, Mr. Antoine, you were discussing the homegrown IMF program that the government of Grenada designed and pursued and implemented with success. So continue that story and tell us about the unique design of that program.
Like I said, the first lesson was we embraced our reality. The second one was we got the right people around the table, and that was ostensibly through the establishment of the Committee of Social Partners, inclusive of government, labor unions, business, churches, and civil society. And I was talking about a particular, just giving an example of how that committee was useful for the design. I remember when we were putting the program together, and of course we were engaged in the IMF subsequently. One of the issues we had to obviously find a way to address the fiscal disequilibrium. You know, that $18 million shortfall every month had to be closed, had to be eliminated. And so it's a simple. You're going to have to raise revenue or cut expenditure, or a combination of both. And so the question came on expenditure cutting. Should we retrench public servants, public officers?
Yes.
And I remember us having that discussion within the Committee of Social Partners. Obviously, the government is not keen to do it, but has to find a way to cut the deficit. The business community said, no, we don't think that's a good idea. We think it will hurt aggregate demand. Therefore, we do not support retrenchment. The labor union said, obviously, we do not support that. It will hurt our workers, put them on the breadline. There are no immediate opportunities for them given the state of the economy. So obviously, we have major concerns about that. The churches said, we are concerned about that from a social justice standpoint, and therefore we should explore other options. You know what we ended up doing? We ended up saying we will not retrench anybody. Instead, we are going to work on a program of attrition with concrete framework to execute that, so that no public servant was sent home during the homegrown program to cut expenditure. But over the life of the program, over those 3 years, we were able to reduce the public service by 800, simply by sticking to in establishing and sticking to adhering to an attrition policy, which essentially we call 3-for-1. For every 3 persons that exited on retirement, resignation, whatever, we would only replace 1.
Yes.
And that worked beautifully in the sense that we were able to reduce the public service over time without resorting to retrenchment. But I share that example because I vividly recall the kind of discussion we had around the table about the option of retrenchment.
Yes.
And how we were able to find a way to do that. I also recall, later on in the program, we were able to make a couple of tweaks to be able to take account of, again, concerns by the partners who were supportive and understood the need to reduce the deficit and to restore fiscal stability and sustainability, but to do so in a compassionate way, in an effective way. And that is one of the things that I think coming out of the Grenada experience that stays with me. One of the 2 other quick points. We kept the nation informed.
Communication was key.
Communication was key. And in leadership, engagement is always key. And I found what we did, we found a way to keep the nation involved. In fact, the Ministry of Finance launched a weekly program called Inside Finance. And we used that half-an-hour program, weekly program, to keep the nation fully informed about the state of the program, what was happening, what was coming next, and then we would tell them what to expect. It would happen, and then we report. So what people would see, and the credibility of the program, was enormous because people knew, the people in finance knew what they were talking about. And I mean, I personally appeared on at least half of those programs. Other colleagues appeared, and we would share and we'd update on progress. Where we were with our target, what happened. We also published our revenues, on our website. We put it on a bulletin board in Ministry of Finance. So people began to really take an interest in this enterprise.
Yes.
They had been called to make sacrifices, or we call it shared sacrifices. And therefore we were keen for us to share the results and ultimately to share in the benefits of those sacrifices. So keeping the nation informed so that people had a sense that the sacrifices were actually amounted to something.
Yes.
That was being closed. So you started with that shortfall of 18 million and you could see it come down to 15, and then you see it come down to 12, and then one day it was 8, and then another day it was 5, and people were seeing that in real time. And so as difficult as the sacrifices were, the progress of the program, and then of course the IMF would come every 6 months and would give its own its own findings, share its own findings.
Yes.
Media conferences every 6 months. The nation was kept informed, and I found that's a very, very important lesson out of the Great Exodus. One other thing I'll mention is having succeeded ultimately with the program over the 3-year period, it was very important to protect the hard-earned gains of the program.
Yes.
People had made sacrifices, and it was important that we protect those gains. And I recall, as Financial Secretary, and as I moved around the country, making the case for the program and sharing and updating on the progress and the results of the program, I kept being asked, P.S., Mr. Antoine, how are you going to ensure, how are we going to ensure that in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time, we're not back having the same conversation again? And I will tell you that that question preoccupied me, it exercised me, because I too wanted to find a way to minimize the risk of us having to ask the nation to make those sacrifices again. And it was out of that question that we took a decision to move forward with the fiscal responsibility law.
Yes.
The fiscal responsibility law. And a lot of people think the IMF is the one who imposed that on Grenada. Well, I can tell you that it's not true. Grenada, the Ministry of Finance, was the one that actually put the idea forward and said, we think this is necessary. The IMF was most happy to support us on it, but we were fully motivated to do this because we wanted to answer the question that was being asked by ordinary citizens who was saying, how do we ensure that we minimize the risk of us coming back here in 5 or 10 years' time and having to do this all over again? And so out of that was the fiscal responsibility legislation in 2015. I'm pleased to see Jamaica had done it, I think.
Yes, indeed. Jamaica has done a similar thing as well.
And I think Barbados is contemplating that. I know Bahamas recently tabled legislation last year, 2018, on that. And I've been a big advocate. And when people wonder why I'm so passionate about fiscal responsibility, which I now call fiscal resilience, because I think it sums up more acutely and accurately what we have to build in this region with climate change, for example. I'm a big supporter, advocate for fiscal resilience legislation because I believe it's an absolute imperative to protect our economies and give us the best chance to be able to not just manage our fiscal situation, but to be able to embark on counter-cyclical fiscal policies when there's a downturn in the economy.
Indeed. Mr. Antoine, we have come to the end of our interview, and if I were to just summarize very quickly, you talked about leadership being able to face the reality, leadership that is inclusive, leadership that is leading with empathy, leadership that is willing to bring people along to make the sacrifices necessary, and leadership that is ensuring that systems and laws are put in place to sustain the successes. And so, with that, we really wanted to thank you so much for sharing with us and continue the good work in our region. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Parker, and best to you and the team at Caribbean Leadership Program.
Please check with the station for other episodes of our Caribbean Leadership Radio series, and to learn more about the Caribbean Leadership Program, visit our website at www.caribbeanleadership.org. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to the Caribbean Leadership Radio series. Please check with this station for other episodes in our series. To learn more about the Caribbean Leadership Program, please visit our website at www.caribbeanleadership.org. Thanks for joining us.